So I've been storing up for 3 weeks here, guys. So I got a lot to say. So take a deep breath. No. Today is October 27th, a great day, a very interesting day. Some days are other days are this is a fire on fire kind of day. It was on this date in 312 AD that Constantine, emperor of Rome, is in a battle. He looks up and he sees a cross. And here's a vision that if he follows, I'm not exactly sure what his vision is, but his vision has something to do with if you follow Christ, you're going to get the victory. This vision leads to Christianity, and again, there's some question as far as the order of these things. As far as when did Constantine actually become a believer? Some have said not till near his deathbed, but whatever. As a result of this, the first thing is that Christianity is taken off of the to be persecuted list, and after that, ultimately, within about 100 years, Christianity becomes the state religion of Rome. Okay, it isn't all under Constantine, but it starts with this particular scene, this particular vision that he has. And the interesting thing is, not everybody thinks this was a good thing. In fact, some people would look at this and they call it Constantinianism, the idea that Christianity should be in charge, that this should be the ruling religion, and all of that kind of stuff. And so there are some who are definitely look at this and say, this was the end of the church as we know it. That from this point on, the church took on a completely different dynamic once it became the state religion of Rome. And I think there's an interesting discussion there, especially if you look and see, well, what has happened in history when Christianity has been in charge, so to speak. Okay, funny you should ask. This is on this date in 1553 that Michael Servetus was killed. Michael Servetus was a doctor in Europe, a brilliant doctor, but a doctor who was what we would call a Unitarian. He denied the Trinity. He denied a lot of the standard doctrines of the Bible, but because he was such a well-known doctor, physician, he got away with it for a long time. Ultimately, he went to Geneva, the home of John Calvin at the time, where he was arrested for being an atheist or being a heretic, and ultimately the Protestants in Geneva executed him for being a heretic. Not for killing anybody, not for doing any tremendous crime, but for being a heretic. Now, one of the great fun discussions in church history is the idea of how much influence did John Calvin have on this particular event. If you really dislike John Calvin, then you would argue that John Calvin is the one that put him to death, and some would argue that, and he certainly was there. He certainly was part of the discussion. If you really like John Calvin, you say John Calvin couldn't have stopped it. It was beyond his control, et cetera, et cetera. I don't really care what role John Calvin had in it. The point is, this is an example of where the Protestants were killing somebody for not being a Protestant. Okay? Again, let's go back to that whole Constantine question. But wait, there's more. It was on this date in 1659 that the Boston martyrs were killed. So who are the Boston martyrs? Well, since you asked, there were three of them: Marmaduke Stevens, William Robinson, and Mary Dyer. Three Quakers in Puritan Boston. Now, the Puritans hated the Quakers. They just did not like the Quakers. I'm not 100% certain why the Puritans hated the Quakers. One of the reasons is that the Quakers rejected the whole church order. Okay, so in Quaker society, everyone was radically equal. So men were women, slaves, free, radically equal. Okay, and the Puritan society just didn't like this. Okay, they did not only that radical equality within their Quaker society, they would have rejected the norms, the societal norms of that you're above me, that you're you're my leader and I have to follow you. They didn't like that. And so the Puritans found these three. They come from England to Boston, and they were kicked out, and then they came back. And so they said, okay, fine, we're going to execute the three of you. And the two of them, Marmaduke Stevenson and William Robinson, were executed that day. And then as Mary Dyer came up, they said, well, you know what, let's not be cruel and hang a woman. So they let her go. And she left the town and came back a few months later, and she was killed the next year. So these are referred to as the Boston Martyrs. Once again, here's the Protestants in control, killing somebody else for not being a Protestant, kind of thing. So, and as a result of that, because of this, today, does anybody know what today is, in terms of days? Today is International Religious Freedom Day. I'm not making this up. If you look it up, International Religious Freedom Day, and this date was picked because it's the date of the Boston Martyrs, kind of thing. Um, so that was in 1659. On the good side, we'll get away from people dying for a minute. In 1771, Francis Asbury landed in Philadelphia. Francis Asbury was an Anglican student, disciple of John Wesley, and became probably the greatest, at least one of the top three, great itinerant preachers of American history. He's probably single-handedly the reason why American Methodism went from being a very small minority religion to being the largest religious group in the country by the time of his death. I mean, he used thousands and thousands and thousands of miles preaching, teaching, traveling back and forth. I mean, you talk about Asbury. I know I've pointed out that you had Jacob Arminius, and the greatest Arminian was not Arminius; it was John Wesley, who created the Methodists. And the greatest Methodist was not John Wesley; it was Francis Asbury. Asbury, you may have heard, there's a school, Asbury Seminary, Asbury College. Francis Asbury. Read a biography of him. Great guy. I mean, dedicated, focused. No question about it. This guy. Was on mission. In fact, when the war broke out, the Revolutionary War broke out, there was something like 100 or so Methodist, Anglican Methodists, because again, that link between Anglicanism and Methodism was blurry for a while. But there were about 100 or so Methodist, Wesleyan missionaries in the United States, of whom Asbury was one. When the war broke out, when it was declared and all of that, all of the Methodist missionaries left except for Asbury. He was the only one that stayed through the war. The thing. Speaking of that, it was on this date in 1787 that the Federalist Papers were published. Has anybody read the Federalist Papers? I'm waiting for the movie to come out personally. Now, this was the series of writings John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison wrote in support of the passage of the Constitution in 1787. Not quite as popular. There's also an Anti-Federalist Papers. They were also published. We don't talk so much about, because the Federalists won. So we don't necessarily talk about the Anti-Federalists quite as much. But there is a Anti-Federalist paper out there as well. I have both. I should have brought them both. I could, object lessons, kind of show and tell kind of thing. But back to the subject at hand, it was on this date in 1838 that Missouri issued the extermination order. The extermination order. The state of Missouri, Protestant state of Missouri. Extermination is anybody who remained in the state of Missouri and insisted on being a Mormon was exterminated, was to be arrested, and if they refused to leave, they were killed. So again, it doesn't mean, I'm not suggesting that Mormons were right or wrong, but the point is, here's another group of Protestants in charge, killing people because they weren't Protestant, simply because they were Mormons, simply because of their religious belief. So let's go back to Constantine. Was that a good thing or not? I don't know. Have to think about this. But finally, the last thing, and this has nothing to do with Constantine, but it was on this date in 1942 that the radio show "You Bet Your Life" premiered. How many have seen You Bet Your Life in one version or another? Yes, with Groucho Marx was the star of the show and was the show. Book of Samuel. I'm excited about this chapter. This is a critical chapter in the story. It is a turning point. Actually, it more just kind of explains why things were happening, or what the future was going to be for the nation of Israel. And I've titled the lesson "Fixing Something That Wasn't Broken." You've all heard the expression, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." This is one way of looking at exactly what the Israelites did. They fixed something that wasn't broken, and we'll talk about how that happened. When we last left our heroes in 1 Samuel 11, it was the best of times for King Saul. The best of times. He had just, if you remember, there was this Jabesh Gilead had been surrounded, and he echoing, foreshadowing, or the events from Judges 18:19. He cut up the oxen and he sent bleeding parts to all of the people, and he said, "This is what's going to happen to you if you don't follow Saul and Samuel," kind of thing, which is an encouraging way if you think about it. You get this message. There's a box on the mailbox, Amazon box, and inside there's a bleeding piece of meat, and it says, "If you don't come to church on Sunday, this is what's going to happen to you." Okay, most of us wouldn't ignore that. We may not come to church. We may be calling the police, but we're not going to ignore some, piece of meat like that. But they come in, and there's a tremendous victory. There's a tremendous victory, and they have over the king. I forget the king's name. Doesn't matter. They have this tremendous victory, and they all come back to central Israel, and they're having a great celebration. If you remember, at the end of chapter 11, it says, let's see, verse 15. So all the people went to Gilgal and made Saul king in the presence of the Lord. There they sacrificed. Now again, that's the second time they've had this big meeting. So the first time they had it, and then there was kind of like, where is he? He's hiding. Who is this guy? Kind of was sort of like, eh. Now he's had this great victory. Now suddenly everybody's, oh yeah, this is our guy. He's our guy. I picked him. That's right. I was for him. It's kind of and you'll see, this is going to happen after this upcoming election. That my prediction for this upcoming election, here it is. One of the two major candidates is going to win. Okay, just saying. One of them is going to win, and both candidates have significant members on their respective political parties that are, let's just say, cool toward their candidacy. But once that person wins, and it doesn't matter who it is, suddenly they're going to see the light. They're going to go, oh, well, yeah, maybe, but I was wrong. That was my candidate all along. That's what I meant to say, kind of thing. And so now you've got a lot of these people going, oh yeah, that's our guy. And they're having, and it says, there they sacrificed fellowship offerings before the Lord, and Saul and all the Israelites held a great celebration. So there's a huge party going on. Yay us. We got our king. We got our victory. Everything is, we are firing on all 8 cylinders. Everything is great. Okay. Now, my alternate idea for the title of this lesson was just one more thing. One more thing. Because Samuel stands up and has one more thing to say. Samuel's not going to pass up this opportunity. I love Samuel. I mean, this guy, he's, the tide is absolutely run against him here. And he's going to stand up and he's going to go, yeah, no, I'm not going down quietly. Okay. He has one more thing to say. Yeah, if you've ever watched the Columbo shows, I've got all of them on DVD and I've watched them all, maybe more than once. Non-zero number of times, multiple times, seeing them all. And if you remember that one of the scenes in Columbo, or one of the ongoing bits, is that Columbo would ask an innocuous question, and then he'd be walking out of the room, and then he'd stop. Wait, one more thing. And that one more question was always something about, So have you ever shot a person? You know, it's just some odd question that always disconcerts the person that he's talking to, sort of thing. And so Samuel stands up and he says, verse 12, chapter 12, verse 1, I got one more thing to say, and it's a big one. Okay. Samuel said to all Israel, I have listened to everything you said to me and have set a king over you. Okay. And of course, he's taking responsibility here. But, you know, we know from chapter 8 that the Lord said he'd listen to everything too. Don't worry, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. So Saul has listened to everything and given them a king. Okay. You got what you wanted. The people have spoken. Okay. We need this, you know, the people have spoken. I gave you a king. You got what you wanted. There you go. Right? Everything works. Everybody got what they wanted. Everybody should be happy. What could possibly go wrong? Now you have a king as your leader. As for me, I am old and gray, and my sons are here with you. Okay. Now, note here, and it'll become clearer through this, that Saul, all indications are Saul is standing right there. Okay. So Samuel, who again is still Samuel, I mean, he's still the man, right? He stands up, he goes, all right, I set a king over, and now you, and I think at this point and now you have a king. I imagine that he's just pointing, here's your guy. He's the tall one there, the tall, good-looking one. You know, I know it's terrible. I mean, I've had that problem where people keep referring to me as he's the tall, good. Well, okay, maybe in my dreams, I don't know, sort of. But here he is. I've set a king. Here he is. Here's your king. So I think everything Saul or Samuel has to say here is said in front of Saul. It's said in front of Saul, and it's said in front of all of the leaders of Israel. Okay, it says, now you have a king. As for me, I am old and gray, and my sons are here with you. Okay, these are the sons that he had appointed leaders, thinking he would continue this kind of leadership setup that he had, and the leaders. It's because of his sons that the elders had rejected his sons and said, well, no, you're old, and your sons aren't following after you. Now the sons are here. So maybe Samuel is just like, my sons are over here. This is who I wanted to put up. It didn't work. I get it. This is who you wanted, the tall, handsome guy. It'll be funny if we get to heaven and, you know, there's VCRs in heaven where we can see the scene. And if Samuel, I imagine Samuel is kind of maybe like a 5'5", you know, and maybe his kids are a little shorter because his wife was short. Maybe his kids are like 5'3" or 5'4", and then there's Saul over there, 6'3", 6'4", however tall he was. But you know, here's my sons are over here. You didn't want them. You got this guy. Okay, we're all good. Everybody's happy. I have been your leader from my youth until this day. Here I stand. Okay. So Saul has listened to everything they said and given them a king. Saul is standing right there through all of this. Saul is old and gray, and he's been their leader for a long time, pretty much his whole life. It's kind of weird trying, you know, the ages and length of time and things like that. I mean, we figure he's probably in his 60s, maybe his 70s, even though he lives for a while longer. I mean, he pretty much lives through a lot of, if not all of, or not all of Saul's kingdom. He lives long enough to anoint David. Okay, but says, I've been here a long time. He says, now, here I stand. Testify against me in the presence of the Lord and his anointed. Okay, Samuel is just like throwing himself out there. All right, guys, all of you, take your best shot. What have I done wrong? Where did I mess up? What error did I make? Tell in front of everybody and in front of the king. Tell me what I did wrong. Whose ox have I taken? Whose donkey have I taken? Whom have I cheated? Whom have I oppressed? From whose hand have I accepted a bribe to make me shut my eyes? If I have done any of these things, I will make it right. Now he's listing a few of the things that Samuel told the people, the elders, this is what a king is going to do. He's like, have I done any of these things? Go ahead. Go ahead. Just whatever. I don't know how long. I wonder how long the silence was, you know. before finally somebody comes in and says, "You have not cheated or oppressed us," they replied. "You have not taken anything from anyone's hand." Okay, so Samuel had been the religious leader, the prophet, the priest, the judge, and he has nothing to show for it. Okay, I mean, he's probably got a house or he's living somewhere. Maybe it's his parents' house. Okay, but he's got nothing to show for it. Certainly nothing untoward. There's no big mansion with a pool in the back. There's no jet airplane. There's no TV show. There's no book publishing deal. Well, maybe later on there's a book. There's a book about him. I don't know. None of that. I was getting to it. No crypto accounts, nothing. Okay, he doesn't have a secret, harem of women in the background. He's got nothing. He's got nothing to show for it except for the fact that the nation is safe, the nation is prospering, the nation is blessed. At this point, he's got nothing to. They've got nothing on him. Okay, so there was nothing in his character, in his action that brought about this need for a king. So again, he's making it clear it's not because of me and anything I did that you need a king or that you wanted a king. And to a certain extent, it's like if they knew Samuel was going to live another 50 years, maybe they wouldn't have asked for a king. Because you remember, they go, "You're old. You're not going to last forever. We need a king." Okay. Far be it, again, in the U.S., we would never, no political party would ever go to somebody and say, "Listen, you're kind of old. You need to jump ship here. You need to get, I'm sure that would never happen in the U.S. But whatever. So he says, "You're old, and not because of me." So Samuel invites anyone to accuse him of doing wrong. That in and of itself is bold. I mean, if you think about it, right? How many of us would want to do that? I'm not. Don't. Not today. No, we're not. Okay. How many of us would really like to stand up and go ahead. What have I done wrong? Anything? Anything? Anyone? Anyone? Not going to happen very often. Maybe it does. I don't know. I've never been in that meeting. Okay. But I've been kind of the other, where the preacher is, "Let me tell you what I did wrong." I've been in those kind of meetings. Those aren't fun. But Samuel's up there and says, "Nothing." Samuel said to them in verse 5, "The Lord is witness against you, and also his anointed is witness this day, that you have not found anything in my hand." Okay. "He is my witness," they said. So again, Saul is right there. Saul is hearing all of this kind of stuff. And I think this is kind of important as we get later on, that Saul is witness to all of this. As we get later on and find out how Saul turns out as a king. That Saul sees this, he hears this. Okay. I mean, really, on the one hand, he's got some outrageously big shoes to fill. Okay, as far as being the leader. Now again, he's the first king, I get that. But in terms of, our last leader never had these problems, Saul. Okay, but regardless. So in verse, so some have looked at this first part of the passage and said, okay, first part of this chapter, and this is the vindication of Samuel. Okay, Samuel's vindicating himself. And now he's going to go on, he's going to vindicate the Lord. Okay, and he says, then, verse 6, Samuel said to the people, "It is the Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron and brought your ancestors up out of Egypt. Now then, stand here, because I am going to confront you with evidence before the Lord as to all the righteous acts performed by the Lord for you and your ancestors." Okay, so let me tell you I haven't done anything wrong. I've done everything right. We're in good shape. Let me remind you what the Lord has done for you. Let me put this in your backpack. Let me, something for you to think about. Let me remind you of all the great things that the Lord has done. And of course, number one is the Exodus. Okay? And he says, "I'm going to confront you with evidence before the Lord as to all the righteous acts performed. After Jacob entered Egypt, they cried to the Lord for help, and the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, who brought your ancestors out of Egypt and settled them in this place." So it's the second time he's pointed this out. Okay? So in Egypt, the Israelites called for help, and the Lord delivered them. Okay, so the Israelites realized that, in Egypt, they bricks without straw, the whole 9 yards. They called for help. The Lord came in and delivered them. Then going back into the book of Judges, but they forgot the Lord their God. So he sold them into the hand of Sisera, the commander of the army of Hazor, and into the hands of the Philistines and the king of Moab, who fought against them. So in the promised land, the Israelites failed the Lord, and the Lord delivered them. And then later on, they were conquered by Sisera. Okay, this is Sisera is the commander. The ruler is Jabin of Hazor. It's in Judges 4 and 5 is where this chapter is. And of course, we all like the story of Sisera. How does Sisera meet his end? Does anybody know? With the nail. That's right. This is the guy who's running. He gets to this camp. He finds this tent where there's this woman named Jael. He says, hide me here in jail. It's like, sure, come on in. No problem. Here, let me get you a glass of milk. Have a milk. Take a rest. Go ahead. Okay. And then he's asleep, fast asleep. No, he must have been like pretty tired. Okay. I mean, again, this guy, I'm guessing he's like exhausted because I can't imagine somebody being very sneaky with a hammer and a nail and, but regardless, I mean, she comes in and literally nails his head to the ground. I mean, if you read the book of Judges, they come in, where is he? Oh, he's in my tent. He's not going anywhere. That's actually a paraphrase from Hamlet. They're looking for they're looking for Polonius. And he finally gives up where Polonius, the dead body, is. And they rush to get him. Don't worry, he's not going anywhere. He'll wait. He'll wait till you come, I think is what he said. Yeah, he's not going anywhere. Literally, he's like literally nailed to the ground. I mean, if you look at the text, it says he's nailed to the ground. So, and so the Lord, and then of course, this is Deborah and Barak is in on this as well. Which is why you don't want to mess with people named Deborah. Just saying, just don't do it. Don't do it. I have to. Well, yeah, I have to. I lock up all the hammers and mallets in my house. With a hidden key and a combination, so that I can't just steal my keys and unlock it, kind of thing. But when she comes home and says, "I want to buy some tent stakes," no, tent stakes in this house. But be that as it may. So it says, and we're conquered by Sisera in Judges 4 and 5. And they were conquered by the Philistines. And they were conquered by the king of Moab. And again, the traditional view of the book of Judges, if you've ever been in a study with the book of Judges, it's quick to point out that there's a series of cycles. There's sin and fallen, and then they're taken over, and then they cry out to the Lord, and the Lord raises up a deliverer, and the deliverer takes care of them. But they forgot the Lord. They cried out to the Lord, who said, and they cried out to the Lord. Okay, I'm sorry. But they forgot the Lord their God, so he sold them into the hand of Sisera, the commander of the army of Hazor, and into the hands of the Philistines and the king of Moab. Now, one of the things about these three in particular, because there's more than this. Okay, there's more than this. There's not just these three. But these three are north, west, south. All directions. Okay, so from all directions, sooner or later, somebody's going to come in and do this. They cried out to the Lord, we have sinned, we have forsaken the Lord and served the Baals and the Ashtaroths, but now deliver us from the hands of our enemies and we will serve you. Then the Lord sent Jerubbaal, Barak, Jephthah, and Samuel. Okay? Now some manuscripts, like the Masoretic text, I think it is, it doesn't say Samuel, it says Samson. Either one could be, because both were judges. Samuel, we know, led in chapter 7 the great victory against the Philistines. Okay, so Samuel certainly is one of the ones that was raised up. So I think he's talking about, but it does seem kind of weird that unless there's another Samuel, which could possibly be, I guess. But it's maybe he's just saying, yeah, I'm part of this group that was raised up. You guys cried out, raised up, remember, and there was this great victory over the Philistines. And in fact, in Judges chapter 8, I think it is, it says that all through once after that victory, the Philistines didn't bother the Israelites again during Samuel's lifetime. So Samuel took care of the Philistines. Okay? Under Samuel's leadership, the Philistines stopped bothering them. Okay? Now that doesn't continue, okay? Because once Saul comes in, then other things. I'm sorry. Then the Lord sent Jerubbaal, Jephthah, and Samuel, and he delivered you from the hands of your enemies all around you, so that you lived in safety. In each of those times, the Lord sent a deliverer, including Samuel. And then the next one, and the Lord delivered you from the hands of your enemies all around you, and you lived in safety. Okay, so he's repeating all of these times. What happened? Every time you guys have fallen, you have a tendency to be fallen into Baal worship, idol worship. The Lord sends somebody out to conquer you. You realize what you did wrong. You cry out. The Lord raises up, deliver, and boom, you're living in safety again. Okay. So what's interesting about that, to me, is that when we look at the book of Judges, and we say, oh yeah, this was a bad thing. This cycle was a bad thing. And it's like, well, I don't know that really the Lord is looking at that going, this is a bad thing. I mean, this is how cried out to me. You worship me. If you don't worship me the way I want you to worship me, I'm going to punish you. And once you're punished, you realize what you did wrong, ask for forgiveness. I'm going to raise up a deliverer, and we're going to have this great relationship. As long as you're worshiping me, as long as you're doing what I want you to do, everything's fine. If not, you're going to get punished. When you get punished, you're going to cry out to me, and I'm going to deliver you. And this was kind of the relationship that the Lord was, he's good with. Like, okay, this is how I want my people to live. I want them to live in this way where they're relying on me for safety. Okay, so the Lord is comfortable with this. But, verse 12, but when you saw, now keep in mind, this is all going on during this great celebration. Okay? We just had this big party thing, kind of big thing, I mean, have you ever been where everything's going great, great party, great conversation, great, and then somebody drops the thing and just kind of, everything kind of comes to a screeching halt, sort of thing, This is what Samuel is doing, right? That's why I like Samuel. but when you saw that Nahash, king of the Ammonites, was moving against you, you said to me, no, we want a king. We want a king. And we talked about this in chapter 8. He said, this is, it's a political solution to a theological problem. God doesn't want them to give a king. God wants them to cry out to him and say, help us. We realize what we've done wrong. The Lord, people of Israel say, wait a minute. We've got a workaround here. We're going to get a king. Okay, and with a king comes kind of like maybe a standing army. So again, this is what Samuel said the king was going to do. He's going to take your kids for his army. He's going to take your wives for his harem, all this kind of stuff. But then they think, we don't have to do all that pesky, repenting anymore, because the king's going to take care of us. Okay? And that's the thought process that both Samuel recognized and the Lord recognizes. That this isn't just, oh, we want the latest and greatest in political models. They want to do away with that whole repenting thing. They want to fundamentally change their relationship with God. They've got a better way to deal with it. Now it's like, oh, the king's going to take care of us. And we don't have to worry about that, going up and do the worship all the time and the sacrifices and the like. We can just kind of do what we want. The king will take care of us. Okay. Samuel and the Lord both recognize what's going on here. Okay. Now we want a king to rule over us, even though the Lord your God was your king. And that's the verse that I've got down at the bottom. But when you saw that Nahash, king of the Ammonites, was moving against you, you said to me, Samuel, no, we want a king to rule over us, even though the Lord your God was your king. So they never realized the relationship that they had, that the Lord was doing the role of the king. They want to take someone and put him in the place of the Lord. So why is having a king a bad thing? Everyone else has a king. This is it. Nation of Israel was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be a shining city on a hill. It was supposed to draw people to them instead of being just like everyone else. Okay? God wanted that intimate relationship with the people of Israel. And instead they wanted a king. I think going through the Old Testament, one of these days I'm going to do a study or a sermon or something on it. That I think there's 3 great moments in the Old Testament, well maybe 4, where uh, where the Lord, where the relationship with the Lord is fundamentally changed. Okay, Garden of Eden is the obvious one. Okay, that's the first one. And then in Exodus, you know, Moses says, "All right, everybody get ready because God's going to come down and speak to you." And the people say, "No, no, Moses, you go speak to God for us." And there's that another layer of separation put in. And then here, they had this relationship and go, "No, we want a king in between us." And of course, the final one is in Jerusalem at the crucifixion. Where is this your king? No, 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 he's not our king. Crucify him, kind of thing. You know, I mean, we kind of do the same thing. We're constantly thinking, wait. Let's put another. You know, we don't want to have our own personal. We'll trust the pastor, and as long as the pastor is preaching the word and we're following him and he likes me and I like him, I'm good. I'm good. Or we like the fact that, well, I'm a Baptist and I'm going to just kind of rely on that rather than fundamentally looking at my own spiritual condition. Okay, we kind of do the same thing. You can steal that if you want. If any of you ladies are going to be in a Quaker church somewhere and preaching, then knock yourself out, help yourself to it, kind of thing. But now we want a king to rule over us, even though the Lord your God was your king. This is really a sad verse. I mean, if you think about it. I mean, you guys have no idea what you're doing. Okay, you ever have that kind of a conversation? I can't really say that I have, but I've seen it in the movies a lot. Where somebody says, "I want to do this," and they ask somebody who knows, and somebody who knows says, "You have no idea what you're getting into. No idea what you're getting into." I'm, "Oh yeah, I do." Maybe it is the first time you have a child that comes home and says, "I have a girlfriend, I have a boyfriend." I say, "You have no idea." "I want to get married." No, no, you have no idea what you're getting into. Whatsoever. One of my sons, won't mention his name, but his first girlfriend, gal pal, was 14. And there were messages flying back and forth about how I love you. I'm like, "Oh, you have." I had that conversation. It didn't go well, but he seems to have recovered. But you have no idea what you're talking about, none whatsoever. And I think this is Samuel's like, "You have no idea. You had it so good, you didn't realize it." Kind of there was another when I worked at the Bill Rice Ranch, and I don't remember a lot of the sermons I've heard in my life. I do remember sermon titles. This is why it's important to title things cleverly, because people are going to remember the title. They're going to remember the title and the stories you tell. They may not remember a bit of the text, but they're going to remember the title and the sermons and the stories you tell. So preach the same sermon 3 weeks in a row, change the stories. Nobody's going to know. Maybe someone's going to know. There's going to be one person who's going to catch it. Okay, but yeah, but you guys have no idea. So this is a sad verse, man. And Saul's right there. So I don't know if Saul's like embarrassed at this point. You think, right? Oh, this is.
Isn't this also the speech a good thing? Because Saul's right there.
Well, yeah.
And you realize that I mean, you're it now, so.
Well, hold that thought, because they come back later and hold that thought. Yes, it is a good thing. And I think part of this is sort of so Saul recognizes what the expectations are and things, right? Now here is the king you have chosen, tall, handsome one, over here, the one you ask for. See, the Lord has set a king over you. Okay. So let's see. And the Lord delivered you from the hands of the enemy, and you lived in safety. Rather than repent in the face of Nahash's threat, the Israelites create a workaround. Let's get a king. Okay. Then the Lord says here, verse 14. If you fear the Lord and serve and obey him and do not rebel against his commands, and here's the change, if both you and the king who reigns over you follow the Lord your God, good. Okay, now this is important. Okay, The king is under the same rules as the people. Okay, now if you remember when Samuel first presents Saul to the kingdom, he writes down a bunch of stuff and he rolls it up and he stores it. And we're like, what's in that? Everybody would like to know what was in that. And this might be part of it. Look, Saul, you need to understand, you are just as subject to the rules as anyone else. The king is not above the law. Okay? A argument that continues on and on and on and on and on to this day, whether a political leader is subject to certain laws or not, or certain king thinks he or she is not subject to that particular law because I'm the president, I'm the king, the so-and-so kind of thing. I mean, every movie set in a southern town with a southern sheriff, the southern sheriff always thinks that he's above the law, kind of thing. If you fear the Lord and serve and obey him and do not rebel against his commands, and if both you and the king who reigns over you follow the Lord your God, good. But if you do not obey the Lord, Saul standing right here, okay, to me, he's like right here, okay. But if you do not obey the Lord, and I like to think it'd be kind of that Samuel's talking to the group, and then he turns. This is speculating. Okay, this is not in the text, but I mean, he turns. He says, "But if you do not obey the Lord, and if you rebel against his commands, his hand will be against you as it was against your ancestors." And he turns back, as it was against your ancestors. Okay? I'm just kind of, Saul can't help but feel this. You know what you get? It's like, wow, this is the deal. Now then, well, let me make sure. The Lord via Samuel says this can work if both you, Israel, and the king who rules over you follow the Lord your God. If you do not, then the Lord's hand will be against you. Now then, again, it's a big celebration going on, big crowd of people. Now then, stand still and see this great thing the Lord is about to do before your eyes. Is it not the wheat harvest now? I will call on the Lord to send thunder and rain, and you will realize what an evil thing you did in the eyes of the Lord whom you asked when you asked for a king. Okay. Now the point about it, isn't it wheat harvest now? It's not supposed to thunder and rain during wheat harvest. Okay. Big storms are not a good thing when it's harvest time. Okay. So Samuel says, you know what? Let me prove that I have the authority to say what I'm saying. Stay right here. Whatever he does, I don't know what he does. Does he pray? Does he point? I mean, Elijah brings down fire from heaven with a 75-word prayer, something like that. But he turns. But I got to believe that, like right at that moment, you hear thunder and rain, and you will realize what an evil thing you did. Then Samuel called on the Lord, and that same day the Lord sent thunder and rain. This is not the rainy season. This is an interruption to the normal order, just like Saul's kingship is an interruption to the normal order. Okay, and the Lord knows it. Okay, so the Lord is like, it's kind of, maybe this is the point where, if I know none of you have ever done this. Nobody in this room has ever done it. I'm sure. That's what these guys are in David Montoria's class that do this kind of stuff. You did something wrong, and you're going to get caught for it. You're going to get caught for it. And so you come up with a killer explanation on why it happened. And of course, in that explanation, there's some other force at work, not you. Okay? And so you're going to, you had the family car, and it came home with a dent. And now you got to explain to your dad why his car is dented. Okay? Sometimes this works. Okay? I was in my dad's car when the tie rod end broke. And for the rest of his life, he blamed me for breaking his car. I'm like, Dad, I was in the car, But you have this explanation. And as you're giving this explanation, all right, here's what happened. And you start going, and the person that you're talking to doesn't believe you. You know it. You just know they don't believe you. Okay? Again, I only know this because of stories Debbie has told me about her childhood, not from my own, of course. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Um, the you know they don't believe you, and you get done with the explanation, and then perhaps they pull out the, oh yeah, well then why this? And oops, you forgot one point, and they bring it out, kind of thing. So I think at this point, I think maybe at this point the elders of Israel are going, oh, I think I think the Lord saw through our plan. I think the Lord saw through our plan. Okay. Samuel called on the Lord, so all the people stood in awe of the Lord and of Samuel. The people all said to Samuel, pray to the Lord your God for your servants so that we will not die, for we have added to all our other sins the evil of asking for a king. I made a note here. 7:6, they fasted. So in 1 Samuel 7:6, you have the story of the Lord at Mizpah, Samuel at Mizpah. So when they had assembled at Mizpah, they drew water and poured it out before the Lord on that day. They feasted and they confessed, we have sinned against the Lord. They've sinned against the Lord. And Samuel said, all right, let's go beat the Philistines. And he does. Now they realize we're doing it again. We have sinned against the Lord because we chose for a king. We thought, again, it isn't just that they put this guy in office. It's this whole spiritual workaround that the king represents. We don't need to cry out for our sins. We got the king to take care of us anymore from now on. Okay. Don't be afraid, Samuel says in verse 20. You have done all this for evil, yet do not turn away from the Lord, but serve the Lord with all your heart. Do not turn away after useless idols. They can do you no good, nor can they rescue you because they are useless. For the sake of his great name, the Lord will not reject his people, because the Lord was pleased to make you his own. Okay, you're still God's people. The Lord's not going to reject you because of this. But you've just made your life a little more difficult, is really what it kind of gets down to. Samuel proves his point by summoning a storm at the wrong time. The wrong season, I guess would be a better way to put that. The people stood in awe. In verse 19 there, the people seemed to realize their sin. We have sinned, right? Because the evil of asking for a king. We recognize we're caught. I think we're caught.
It's just the same pattern. Same pattern in Judges. It just, come on.
Yeah.
What we all do is over.
Oh, but this time it's going to be different. This time it's going to be different. It's going to be different. Because we got this nice, tall, handsome king here. This guy is going to take care of it now. Okay? But serve the Lord with all your heart. Do not turn away. For the sake of his great name, the Lord will not reject his people, because the Lord was pleased to make you his own. As for me. So again, lest they think that Samuel is angry, which I think he is, disappointed, perhaps, right? More disappointed than angry, or disappointed and angry. Is that dangry? You put those together? I don't know. But he's disappointed. He's angry. But lest they think that Samuel is just going to walk off the stage, he says, as for me, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by failing to pray for you. Okay? I'm still on your side. Okay? I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still alive. And I will teach you the way that is good and right. Now, maybe at this point, he's looking at Saul. But Saul is, I will teach you. I will be here. I will teach you. Okay? He's offering, he said, I'm still here. I will teach you. I will do everything I can for you. Okay? I am on your side. I've got this power. Again, we talked about whatever Samuel said came true. Remember we talked about that was one of the descriptors of Samuel. And when Samuel spoke to God, God listened. Okay? So he says, I will do for you whatever. I will do all that I can for you. This becomes important when we start talking about their next event. Okay, Samuel in front of the crowd says, you can count on me still. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. But be sure to fear the Lord and serve him faithfully with all your heart. Consider what great things he has done for you. So Samuel reassures the nation, the Lord won't reject you because the Lord intentionally made you his own. He intentionally made you his own. It wasn't a mistake. Although I'm sure at some times it seems like it. Seriously, wouldn't another country have been better? But it's the Lord intentionally made you his own. And the fact that you're his own is never going to change. Samuel reassures the nation he will continue to pray for them. Samuel will teach you the way that is good and right. It's interesting where he says that, I will teach you the way that is good and right. It kind of reminded me, like in the New Testament, in the book of Acts, the first believers following Jesus were followers of the way. Okay, Christians is a word that comes later, but they were followers of the way. And Samuel says, I will teach you the way that is good and right. Okay, so Samuel has brought him back from the edge. He's like, you sinned. I've proven it to you. God has shown his displeasure of what you're doing, but don't worry, we're gonna work this through. I'm still here. I'm still doing it. People are like, okay, all right. Samuel has one more thing to say. Just one more thing. Yet if you persist in doing evil, both you and your king will perish. But if you persist in doing evil, both you, Israel, and your king, and Saul is standing right there. Okay? Or maybe he's in the center. Maybe he's sitting where Holly is sitting. He's in, like if you go to an ordination service, right? Where they're usually the ordinate, the person being ordained is like sitting in the front row and they're preaching. Maybe Saul is sitting right there in front of him. I don't know. He's right there. He's visible. It says if you persist in continuing to think that you can work around, that you can come up with an alternative way to be my people, you and your king will perish. And ultimately, what happens to the nation of Israel? I mean, way down the line, if you know your Bible history, well, anybody know who the current king of Israel is? No, nobody knows. Okay, is there somebody out there? I would suppose so that could trace their. I saw a thing in the paper the other day talking about the current king of France, or the guy who would be the king of France if France still had a king. He's a rich guy. I know it's surprising. Lives in a chateau somewhere in France, and he's like, yeah, I'm the fifth great grandson of Louis the something or other kind of thing. So Samuel has done this mid-course correction. He's all right. You want a king? This is how it's going to be. This is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to work. You guys know that. Everything's going to be fine, right? We have to come back next week to find out. Any questions?
Falls in the category of be careful what you wish for, you might just get it.
Yes. Yes. Or if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of thing. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. I'll see you all next week. Thanks for coming, Sharon.